Okay.
York.
Okay now.
My name is Catherine York Hester. I was born in Evansville in 1926. We lived there for about 6.5 years. Then that was during the Depression, and I think my father thought that he could raise some of the food that we ate on a farm. So we moved 14 miles out into the country.
Where were you born? What is it? Where was it?
I was born in Evansville. Yeah, and at the corner of Covert and Garvin. And when we moved out into the country, it was 14 miles out to a little town called Millersburg. And my father worked for the Evansville Journal. And he had to drive this 14 miles to work. And sometimes there was no work. He was not a regular, he was a sub. And when he didn't have work, of course, he'd have to drive that 14 miles back out into the country. And I think that that was one of the reasons that they decided, my mother and father decided to move closer to town. And we moved to Newburgh in 1931. And of course, I went to school there. I graduated from high school there. I went to college for 2 years.
And U of E?
Yes, I went to, it was Evansville College at that time.
In high school, when did you graduate from high school? What high school did you go to?
I went to Newburgh High School. Yeah, Newburgh Elementary and Newburgh High School.
And you graduated in what year?
1944.
Okay.
I graduated in 44. I went I went to college for 2 years, 44 to 46. Then I married, and I had 2 children, and so then 10 years later, well, let me go back. I've lost my train of thought.
That's okay. Don't worry.
We moved from Millersburg to Newburgh, and I went to Newburgh Elementary, graduated from Newburgh High School, and then went for 2 years to Evansville College. I married and had 2 children. Then my husband was working at the Hester Motor Company in Boonville. So we moved up to Boonville and lived there for 10 years. But then we just decided that to raise and educate children, I was going to have to go to work. I had been a telephone operator at Newburgh, so I went to Boonville and was and worked there for several years. Then I went back to college and finished my and got my degree. And then I taught at Newburgh Elementary. I taught first grade for 6 years, and I taught third grade for 20 years. Then that was in 1984, and I knew that my husband was going to retire from his job in 85. So I wanted a year just to be a housewife and do what I wanted to do. So in 84, I retired also. I enjoyed teaching. I really enjoyed the children and enjoyed the other teachers. We had a great faculty, and I was very grateful to be a part of that faculty. Then in 85, no, in 85 then, we started going to Texas. We went down there for a little summer 2-week vacation, and there were other friends that had a place down there, so we went to a little trailer park called well, the name escapes
That's all right.
me now.
Just a trailer park there in Texas, near Dallas.
Near Rockport, Texas.
I see.
And we wintered there for 17 years. At first, we would take our we had a fifth wheel, and we would take that fifth wheel down. Then after a while, we traded the fifth wheel off to a small motor home, and then we just left it down there so that whenever we wanted to go down, we would have a place down there to stay.
I'm excited about it.
My husband passed away in 2006, and we lived in Boonville. Then my daughter said, "Mom, you ought to be in town," and so I moved into Evansville, an apartment at the corner of 3rd and Court Street called Market Street Living, and I've lived there ever since. I moved there in February of 2013, and I have enjoyed the place very much. The people are friendly, and I have enjoyed it very much.
Well, that's excellent. That's excellent. Now, Mrs. Hester, can you your husband's relayed stories about his World War II experience. Can you tell us what his full name was, when he was born, and then where he grew up, and then if you know where he went to school? If not, that's all right. And then where he went into the service and what he did in the service and what he did for a living.
Okay. My husband was born in 1923, and his mother passed away when he was 6 years old, and his father remarried, and he did not have too good a childhood, but he finished high school, and he was a hard worker. He worked for a company in Boonville, and then he had a friend who worked for Alcoa, and that friend helped him get a job down at the Sigico power plant, and he worked there for years until he passed away.
And in the Army, was he in the Army, Air Force, Navy?
He was in the Army for 3 years. Lucky duck, the closest he got to the service, to the war, was he was stationed in Hawaii for 3 years, and they were just getting ready to send his unit to Japan, but then the war was settled.
Was he on a ship or just on a
No, he was
unit?
he was in see, he had his first 6 weeks at Camp Shelby, Mississippi, and he spent quite a lot of time there in Mississippi. Then he was transferred. His unit was transferred to Hawaii.
And what would he do in his unit? Do you remember anything? Did he ever say what his unit was about?
He was one of the procurers for the food.
I see. Yes.
The
Sort of supply, help
yeah,
with supplies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did he? Was he scared in that war?
No, of course. He just got over to Hawaii.
Yes.
I think the thing was that he missed his family, and by that time we had some children, and he didn't really dislike it, but he just wanted to be home.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Well, it's awful nice your son and your son's friend to be interested in all these things. They've done a lot. They've done a lot for our city, and a lot for these for the Shrine Fest and also the Freedom Heritage Museum.
Yeah.
They've been very generous with their time and their talents.
Well, in that way, he is much like his father. Of course, he looks like his father.
Yes.
And he is. That's exactly what Charlie would do. Help wherever he could.
Yeah.
And David is much like him.
Yes. Well, you ought to be proud of him. That's nice to give back. It's nice to give back. And his wife is nice, and both of them are nice. And they came over from San Diego. I was based there for years, and I lost my father. He was a World War II vet in 2007.
Mm-hmm.
You lost your husband in 2006. So
Yeah.
similar time. Both of them were born in 1923. That's the year of our veterans. A lot of them.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Miss Hester. You've been very good.
You're
good
very
speaker.
welcome.
Thank you. Okay.
Glad to